Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Gaijin has decided on this Monday that there's going to be a million sales, which are ones for the MiG-21 and also the Marat. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to cover all of those vehicles, which ones are on sale, which ones to review, and then also at the same time have a chat about one of the new vehicles when it comes to War Thunder, which seems to have got a bunch of stuff attached to it now, such as economical data, so we can kind of work out what's going on with it. So first of all, let's have a look at the MiG-21s. This is the anniversary of their first flight, which is being celebrated from the 16th of June until the 19th, which means a bunch of vehicles are on sale. Basically a 30% discount. First of all, you have the MiG-21 R13-300, the MiG-21 SPS-K for Germany. Both of those are the GE vehicles that are on sale. And then there are 3 packs that are on sale. You have the MiG-21 Bis Lazur-M, which is the German MiG-21 Bis. You have the Bison for the British, which is also 30% off. And the J7D for China, which is 30% off too. The other vehicle that is also at a discount is the Marat, which is coming back for Golden Eagles from today onwards and is also here to stay. So if you don't want to pick it up for 30% off, later in the year, it will probably be 50% off, which will obviously make it a lot nicer. Let's get into the reviews of the vehicles, and as always, if you enjoy the content, make sure to subscribe and also like the video. Let's get started. So we'll start off looking at the MiG-21s that are on sale with the MiG-21 R13-300. This vehicle is the only Soviet one that's on sale, which is surprising since, of course, the MiG-21 is from the USSR. And basically what you're getting out of this is something with a pretty powerful engine for its BR, an interesting setup when it comes to its weaponry, and also, unfortunately, not a lot of defenses. So what a lot of people do nowadays with this thing is they use it basically as a bomb truck. So you take the 2 incendiaries, you take the missiles, you hit a base, and then you actually, use the missiles afterwards. For me personally, I think it's much better to use kind of like this type of setup where you get the R3Rs and also the R3Ss, because the R3Ss are bad. They're basically just very weak kind of IR missiles from the back, very similar to AIM-9Bs, so you have to wait for targets to be pretty slow, or you have to basically use it in terms of trying to slow down a target to then finish it off with the guns, which, you have the 23mm GSH-23L, which is completely fine. In the middle, you just have to get used to using it. But what the R3Rs can give you is they can give you access to a way of engaging a target from the front, which is usually not seen at this BR, unless something like an Su-25 or an A-10 turns up, which, is something that happens quite a lot. So you can actually use the radar to lock onto a vehicle and then use the R3Rs to attack them without them really realizing what's going on. Now, the issue with this vehicle, as I said, it can't defend itself. So you are very missile focused because you have to stay fast and you have to basically keep away from the enemies as much as possible. So it means later on in the battle, after you've tried to do all of your missile shenanigans, there's not really a lot you can do, and that's why this thing is at 9.7. If this vehicle had some countermeasures, it would probably be a higher BR, but because it isn't, you basically just die, and that just sucks. Like, it's just not very fun. So I can't recommend this thing, because whenever you have a vehicle that can't defend itself around this BR, you know exactly what's around this BR. A bunch of really good missiles, and you just keep dying to things that you're just going to get frustrated at. Because in other vehicles around this BR, you'll be able to defend yourself. Now, the next vehicle we're going to look at is the MiG-21 SPS-K. Now, this one is a little bit more interesting because you have now the option for countermeasures. So basically, the way that the MiG-21 SPS-K works is you can either bring a gun, so the offensive armament, or you can bring countermeasures, which you can see right here. If you bring the countermeasures, you can't bring the gun. So basically, you are limited in terms of what you can do. Do you want defense or do you want offense? It also has a weird and wonderful set of missiles. So you can bring the 2 R3Rs, 2 R3Ss, which is obviously very similar to what you find on the MiG-21S, but you also have an opportunity to bring some R60s if you want, 2 of them specifically. So what you can do is you can kind of mix and match, and you can actually bring 2 R3Rs and then 1 R60, which I think isn't like a bad idea. You can also bring like 2 R3Ss and then, you know, the countermeasures and then like 1 R60 or whatever you feel like. It does have custom kind of setups on that, which is really cool. But a lot of the other kind of like internals are basically the same as the other one. You know, you have the R11 F2S 300. You can see the slight difference in terms of engine, but it's not a huge difference. You have the Sapphire 21. You know, you have a very basic RWR in this thing, which, you know, doesn't really give you a lot of information. But at 9.7, you know, the R60 is pretty strong. You'll face a lot of targets that won't have countermeasures, so you can deal with them. But the only issue is you either have to pick the gun or you pick the countermeasures. And I think most of the time you pick the countermeasures, which massively limits you in terms of the firepower that you can bring along. And that just kind of sucks. I don't, once again, like it to play a vehicle which you have to choose either option to kind of do well with it, because there's so many vehicles at this BR which have both options available to you at the same time. And since this thing will get up tiered, you'll face a lot better vehicles which will have access to those options too. So it's just not in a great place in terms of that setup. Talking about a vehicle that is in a pretty good place right now, you have the MiG-21 Bis Lazur-M. So this is just a MiG-21 Bis. The Lazur-M system that this has access to doesn't work in the game because it's not a mechanic that turns up. You can see it has the R25-300 engine, which has a lot more afterburner thrust than the other MiG-21s, and also it has countermeasures and a gun. They figured out how to do it. So they figured out how to be able to defend themselves while also keeping the offensive armament. You can see here the countermeasures and also the gun in the front. So this vehicle has access to a lot of interesting weapons. You have some R3Rs once again, which at this BR, which is a lot higher, aren't very good. But then you also have access to R60 MKs. The MK is the export version of the M, so it's the all-aspect R60s. These are really easily flareable, but you do get 6 of them. Which gives you a lot of opportunity to do quite a lot of stuff. You also get the R13s. Some people like using the R13s. For me, it's a very like hit and miss missile. Sometimes it doesn't really care about flares. Other times, you know, I get the range wrong on it, so can be a little bit odd. So taking like 2 of these and then like 4 of the R60Ms doesn't seem like a bad idea. The other thing is obviously the R3Rs, but I just don't really like them at all. You do get rockets, but they're kind of worthless, and also incendiaries, so you can bomb a base, but please don't. Like the MiG-21 Bis is a very good fighter at the moment, so just use it as that. So the things at 11.0, it got dropped in BR a bunch of times because of the fact that it just got nuked by semi-active radar homing missiles. Nowadays, with the meta the way that it is, it's actually in a pretty good place. So as long as you understand how to stay close to the ground, as long as you understand how to use your countermeasures, because the thing I like about the countermeasures, especially if you stay close to the ground, they fire downwards. So what it does is it actually runs the missile into the ground while you're going forward, which is really cool. You have the speed to be able to basically outrun everything at this BR, and also at the same time, if you use this thing as a bullet. So basically just like use it as like an F-104, you go really fast, you go into the mess, you fire all your missiles, and then you get out on the other side, and then basically you'll end up with like 1 or 2 or 3 kills, and then you can kind of reset, see what the battle looks like. You can either go home or you can do it again. It works really well for that, and you know, it's really nice. This vehicle can overspeed, so if you leave it at 110 or WEP, let's call it, afterburner thrust, it will just rip itself apart. So you have to run it at about 105% at all times, just to kind of grind it through. And also another thing to also mention about this, so right now, in terms of like high tier premiums for Germany, the IDS is not in a good place because now it gets outsped by MiG-23s and MiG-21s going for bases. So basically, you are a bomb truck who can't bomb. The Su-22 is exactly the same problem since it takes a long time to get up to speed. So both of these can't do the job that they used to do. So the Lazur-M is really the only option at this BR to be able to actually do that job. The other thing about it, though, is, of course, the Hornet is coming. So, you know, you could maybe pick that up, but it's going to be more expensive than the MiG-21 Bis. The Bison is also on sale. This is a very competent vehicle for the British, and it has access to some really fun missiles, which I know people will really enjoy. The only issue is how many missiles you get at 12.3, and therefore you have to be a little bit careful in how you're going to use them. This also has the R25-300, so it is basically just a MiG-21 Bis. You do have the Copio 21 radar, though, which, as you can see, is a big upgrade over the previous ones, and then you have a really good RWR as well, and also all of the general things that you would want for your pilots. So you have 60 countermeasures, which is quite cool. They do fire upwards, so not as nice as the ones that fire downwards. And then also, you do also have the gun, which is right here. Now, the big difference between this and the MiG-21 Bis is the radar and also the missiles you get access to. So you get the R27T1s, which are the big old IR missiles. You also get the R27R1s, which is the big semi-active radar homing missiles. And you also get the R73s, which are the IRCCM, IR all-aspect Soviet missiles, the export version of them. So even though you don't get a lot of weaponry, you get the best or some of the best semi-active radar homing missiles at the BR, and then also you get some of the best, if not the best, IR missiles at 12.32. So taking them together gives you quite a lot of options. You also have a lot of bombs and rockets and even guided munitions if you want to use these in ground forces, but there's probably better options to bring if you want to do that. It doesn't get access to incendiaries, so you can't do the silly incendiary bomb stuff. You actually have to use this thing how you're supposed to, which I think is really good. And it's all basically about if you can manage the armaments properly on this. So are you able to actually work out when targets should be hit with the semi-actives, or when they should be hit with the IRs, or when they shouldn't be hit at all, and you should hold your armaments. If you're able to do that, and if you're confident in doing that, you can easily rack up 4 or 5 kills with this thing without even really thinking. But it's just about patience and getting the right timings. And if you can do that, you'll have a great time in this. It's also really the only option to kind of like grind out British, jets, unless you kind of like, grind through it normally like I do. Basically, the only options that you have are stuff like the F4J, which is in a bad place, the T10, which once again is very limited in terms of armament. So you have this one, which is at 12.3 in the good old air battles. You don't really use this in ground, so being at 11.7 doesn't really matter. I think generally with this vehicle, there is a lot to actually like about it, and there's a lot to kind of enjoy about it. I'm just hoping that, people don't get frustrated at the fact that it has such a limited amount of weapons. You also have the J7D that has turned up. This one is the go-to grinder for the Chinese tech tree. So for me, I actually don't mind the Chinese tech tree. I think there's quite a lot of fun vehicles in it. But the problem with it is a lot of it is similar to other nations that have played. And if you're like me and you've played a lot of different nations and played them a lot, what ends up happening is it gets kind of dull. So there's only so many times you can play a P47, a P51, a Sabre, an F100, all of these vehicles, which are basically another tech trees apart from the Q5. You have to wait until you get to the J7 to actually have something that's a little bit different. So when it comes to like the premium side of things, I get why people pick stuff like this up so they can kind of like grind through the tech tree. So the engine which is on this thing is the Shenyang Liming WP13FI. You can see it's slightly worse than the MiG-21 Bis engine, but it is also low BR. It's a 10.7 in air, 10.3 in ground, and yeah, the engine is completely fine at this BR. It works well, everything's good. It has the JL7A radar, which is pretty worthless, but you don't need it to be good because your weaponry doesn't, matter towards it. It does have quite a nice RWR compared to some of the earlier MiG-21s, but it's still not crazy good, like it's fine. And also you do keep the Type 23-3 cannon, which is basically the same as the GSL. The big difference between this and a lot of the other MiG-21s is it has an insane set of weaponry for this BR. So you have access to PL-5Bs. PL-5Bs are rear aspect missiles, but they have a hell of a booster on them. And also they have a great overload. You can see here 30 Gs. And also a lot of the time they'll just beat countermeasures if the target is going too slow. So they are not very sensitive to flares. You have to work really hard to get them off of you if you aren't going, you know, as quick as you could. The PL-7s also are just magic wands. And magic wands are just insane, as anybody will tell you. Because, you know, they're some of the best missiles in the game. I would argue they are the best rear aspect missiles in the game. And at 10.7, you get 4 of them. And, you know, you also don't have any of the issues of like other vehicles that have access to these. So you have 72 countermeasures, you're able to defend yourself, you are crazy fast, and you get a crazy armament. Like it's an insane vehicle. The J7B has been busted for incredibly long time, and as somebody who's played a lot of the J7E and the J7D, it's just insane to see how this thing has never gone up in BR. Basically because it doesn't have any semi-actives. Just to give you like an idea, right? So France exists, and France is the place where these missiles come from, right? So at 10.7 in the Mirage 3E, you have a very similar platform, but you have less weaponry. You only get 2 magics instead of 4, and also you are limited in other areas too because of your design. The other vehicles are also, you know, limited in armament, the Mirage 3C and the Mirage 5F, but the J7D doesn't have this issue, even though it's a similar BR and will fight it a lot. You also stay away from the 12.0 bracket, which means you'll see a lot of like 11.0 and 11.3, which is really nice. And if you want to grind out the Chinese tech tree, there isn't really better options. This one is just insane. It's a fantastic pick. The Marat is here. There's not too much to really say about this one until the new BR changes come in, so we'll see where it kind of lays. The vehicle itself sits very low in the water, so it's kind of hard to do damage to it, especially to the ammo, which is really low there. But generally the problem with these premium sets that they put in is they're just worse than the vehicles that they face. So you can see that this is at 6.7, and then the Kronstadt, the Arkhangelsk, the Izmail, and the Novorossiysk, which are vehicles that you'll meet all the time, are only 0.3 BR higher. So I don't really want to comment on this until the BR changes come in, until we see where everything lies, because it's just not really going to be worth it. And also at the same time, later on, this thing will be 50% off. So it'll be an even better deal since it is here to stay and they're not getting rid of it. So what I'll do is I'll chat about it when it's done. So it looks like Gaijin has updated the dev server, and if it goes live again, we'll make sure to cover it for you. But yeah, there's a bunch of changes which has turned up. Basically, there's a new vehicle, the C3604, which is the Swiss vehicle we saw in the files, and it's going to be a pack premium for the Swiss in the German tech tree. It's going to be rank 2, BR 2.7, and also have a very small repair cost. But yeah, that just kind of sucks, doesn't it? Like, it's annoying that it's the first kind of Swiss vehicle we could have seen, which would have not been like a high BR jet, and they're making it a premium. I don't like it when they do this, and I hope we get more of the C36s, as we talked about previously. There is a bunch of them, whether they be like prototypes or like main production stuff, but it's just kind of sad. I would like to see it in the standard tech tree. I'll make sure to cover all the stuff for you, and we'll see what kind of goes on with it. Let's see if the update comes out this week or whether it'll be next week. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecovo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Warthunder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem, Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.